Okay, Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo Antaha Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akhila Shakti Daraswadamnam अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all quite refreshed from last week's Gita Chintana. And we make our onward journey into Katha Upanishad. So, as you know, for the past, I think this is since December of last year, we have been doing a contemplation of Katha Upanishad. A brief overview, Katha Upanishad is part of the Krishna Yajur Veda. The Rishi is Kata Rishi, Devata is Vamana, and the Chandas is Anushtup Chandas. So we have to first recognize that and then think about Katha Upanishad. And the Katha Upanishad, as you know, has got 2 adhyayas and then 3 vallis each in each adhyaya. So we can be very proud that we have covered quite a lot of ground in Katha Upanishad, and we are coming to the last 1/3 of the Katha Upanishad. Now, as you know, this whole story begins with our friend Nachiketa asking 3 boons. And he asks 3 boons. You could ask why he could have asked 5 boons, right? But why is it that he asked only 3 boons? So I'm just going to pause there and get you guys to think about it, and who is going to answer that question as to why Nachiketa asked only for 3 boons but not more, because there is so much to be asked, but he asked only 3. Who wants to tackle that question? Okay, Ragnesh, yeah.
So we have 3 guna, Sattva, Tamas and Rajas, or Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, the 3 gods, whichever is take.
Okay, that's a long shot, Pragnesh, but a good try, about 3. But the view here is, thank you for that.
Can I answer?
Yeah, Padma, go for. Padmaja, go for.
That's what he waits for Yama for 3 days in Yamaloka. That's why he asked for 3 boon.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting interpretation. But the question is, why did Yama make him wait for 3 nights rather than 5 nights? Or he could have just made him wait for 1 night. Why 3 nights?
Madhu, can I take a guess?
Yeah.
Because in that, the last question that he asks, he's going to get the ultimate knowledge. So after that, he does not need any more boons.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's a very good answer, Sushruti. Thank you very much. So all of us got the answers right in one form or the other. Why the number 3 is important in Vedic philosophy, and Pragnesh ji had a view on that. And then Padmajaji was mentioning about why he waited for 3 nights, and so Yama felt that he needs to give him for 3 boons. And Sushrut very beautifully captured that the third question basically covers everything that needs to be known in philosophy. Yeah, so 3 boons, essentially, Sushruti, you're absolutely spot on, that the 3 boons covers every aspect of philosophy that is out there that needs to be covered by Yama for our benefit. So that is one view as to why those 3 boons are not more. So next question that comes up is, Yama spent very briefly for the first boon, and then he spent about a valli or so for the second boon. But for the third boon, he's going on and on and on. If you think about it, the discussions about the question that Nachiketa asked, he asked, when I am in moksha, what is my relationship with the Supreme? What is the greatness of the Supreme in liberation? What are all the things that he does? Am I controlled by him? Is there something called moksha? What happens in that moksha sthiti? Those were all the questions, right? So the third boon, Yama spends a lot of time talking about it. The reason being, there is so much to talk about Brahman. After all, Krishna has said, Vedaishta sarvair ahameva vedyaha, and this Veda is infinite. And the more we talk about it, it still feels that we have not talked enough about Brahman. So in that spirit, Yama spends a lot of time talking about Brahman and his greatness, or Paramatma or Bhagavan and his greatness in the third Vara. Okay, so we did the second Adhyaya, first Valli, and I just want to do a quick revision of that. I know we started about 6 minutes or so late, so I hope that we will stay on a little bit longer and cover the ground today. So the first Valli of the second Adhyaya, as you know, had quite amazing mantras, and I just want to briefly go through it so that get us back into the group. So the first mantra was Paranchikani Vetranat Swayambhuhu Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman Kashtidiraha Pratyagatmanam Aikshati Agrutta Chakshuhu Amrutatvam Ichan. So very briefly there, Yama said, human beings, that is you and me, for us, our body is designed, evolutionarily, our body is designed in such a way that we are always looking outside. We are always looking only externally, but not internally. Okay, so who is going to take up this question about the first verse? Why has the Supreme in evolution created this pindanda in such a way that our 5 indriyas always face externally? So what is the reason? What is the philosophical approach to that particular problem? God could have been very benevolent and merciful to us and would have made us, face inwards, but that's not what he has done. Why is that the case? Who is going to take that one? Any takers? Okay, so this is a test. So this samsara, our samsara here is a test, and we have to pass this examination. And passing that examination means that we have that nitya anitya vastu viveka, as Shankaracharya said in his Sutra Bhashya, that we need to try and make the discrimination. And how do you make the discrimination? By using your indriyas, and you start off by looking outside, and then you feel that this is all waste of time, and then you go inside. So that is the reason this is an examination for us. So then after that, he goes on to talk about Hantata idam pravakshami guhyam brahma sanatanam yatacha maranam prapya atma bhavati bhautama. So this is an interesting one, and I put it in purple because this is actually extracted from the second valli of the second Adhyaya, because I told you before that the verses are moved over thousands of years. Some verses are moved to other vallis and so on. So the classic rendering is you bring these verses here. So here what Yama is telling is, he is telling, I'm going to give you this very secretive knowledge. And then he says, Ya esha suktesha jagrati kamam purusho nirmamanaha tadeva shukram tad brahma tadeva amrutam uchyate tasmin lokaha shritaha sarve tadu na atyeti kashtana etad tat. So that is the very first verse where he has used this etad tat. And as you can see, throughout this particular valli, he has used etad tat. Let's count how many times he has done it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So around 9 times, I think I counted it right. In 9 times in this valli, he has used etad tat. So when somebody repeats this again and again, in this context, it is not a punarukti, which can be a dosha, but this is not a punarukti, but this is actually to reinforce and make this go into our head again and again, that all the greatness of Paramatma that I have spoken to you so far, that Paramatma is inside you, and it is the same Paramatma who is also there in the moksha sthiti. Yetat is the one inside you as your Paramatma. Tat is that one that is there in the moksha sthiti. And in between, he had put this word Vai. Vai is verily. Verily means emphasizing absolutely the same Paramatma is the one who is there in the moksha sthiti. Okay. And in the last few verses, Yama makes it very clear that he who does a contemplation of Brahman in various ways, defective ways, is destined for Andhatamas. So who are the ones who think about Brahman in the wrong way, who are destined for the eternal hells? And Yama tells that he who thinks that the attributes of the Lord and the Lord are different, that person is destined for eternal hells. He who thinks that the attributes of the Lord is limited, he has a very, very bad future. He who thinks he is Brahman also has a very questionable future. And Yama then goes on to say that the Avatara Rupas, the Vyuha forms, the Bhagavan form, the Amsha, Avesha, Bimba Rupa, they are all the same. And if you think them differently, it is, don't do that mistake, is what Yama is warning us. And that is the most important message that comes out of the first Valli, is how do we do that upasana of Brahman? Okay. One aspect is Brahman is the same. He is constant. He is never changing. He is the same. Okay. But on the other side, or us as infinite jivas, we all have infinitely different capacities to perceive this Brahman. Okay. This chap is the same, but we grasp him differently based on our own capacities. Okay. So Yama tells us that is the fact of life, but when we are different and we have different capacities to know Brahman, one of the first things that we need to understand is our capacity to grasp him is limited, but that does not limit him. He is the same everywhere. The Shastras talk about him as Brahman, as the all-pervading being, or it talks about the Paramatma who is inside you in your heart, or it talks about this Bhagavan who is the personal form of the Supreme. And for the Supreme, they are all the same. And for us also, we should do the upasana in that spirit, that they are all the same. So when you take that kind of approach, which is what Yama is telling us, there can be no sectarianism at all. Nobody can have an argument of what Yama is saying. It is very democratic and a secular view of who this Brahman is. And the person who doesn't do that type of upasanas, in the last verse, in the last two verses, he has told, in fact, in the penultimate verse, he said, Yata udakam durge vrushtam paravateshu vidavati evam dharman prutak pashyan taneva anuvidavati. Key verse of Katha Upanishad in this world, telling us, he who approaches Brahman as different will fall very, very rapidly, just like how from the top of a mountain, the waterfalls just falls down rapidly to the ground, and that is how he is going to fall. So when we take that in the truest spirit of spirituality, then what it means is, if you want to worship the Supreme as Rama, go ahead. If you want to worship him as Krishna, go ahead. If you want to worship him as Narasimha or Varaha, or whatever else that you want to worship him, that's absolutely fine. But don't make a difference. Your God is not different from my God. They are all the same. It is just we who are thinking about him from different angles, but he is the same. He who does not perceive like this falls down. Okay. So that is a very, very key message of Yama in the first valli of the second adhyaya. Okay. So as soon as he has finished the first valli, he moves on to the second valli, where he carries on with his adoration and description of Brahman and how we understand this Brahman or Paramatma or Bhagavan. That conversation continues, and it continues up to the third valli, and some of the philosophies that come in the second valli is just amazing. And we will touch upon two verses if we can. So what are the verses? You will be very familiar with this in Gita. So I got a quiz coming up there. So Puram ekadasha dwaram ajasya avakrate chetasaha. So I'll read it again. Puram ekadasha dwaram ajasya avakra chetasaha. Anushtaya na shochati vimuktascha vimuktyate yetadvai tat. Okay. So pay attention to the first verse. Puram ekadasha dwaram. Okay, so I'm going to have a quiz there. So can anybody recall a similar verse in Bhagavad Gita talking about a similar kind of idea? So who is going to answer that before I go to the next slide? Pragnesh?
Navadvara Pure.
Okay.
9-gated city.
Okay, good. So do you want to complete the verse?
That's too much. Sorry, I should have, but I was too quick. Sorry.
No worries, but that's great, great. Yeah, that's right. Neeta Sushtu, do you want to come there? You're unmuted.
Yeah, it is Navadvare Pure Dehi Nakurvan Nakarayam. It starts off Sarva Karmani Manasa Sanyasyaste Sukham Vashi.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sorry, go on. Complete it. Yeah.
Navadware Pure Dehi Naiva Kurvanna Kari. I guess it was there in the Gita quiz as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Neetaji. So that's a very similar word. So, and again, to remind you, Gita and Katha Upanishad needs to be read together. So whatever happens in Katha Upanishad, you should always search for a verse in Gita. There will always be a verse. Yeah. So we'll come to that next. So that is the first verse. Puram ekadashadwaram ajasya avakrate chetasaha anushtaya na shochati vimuktascha vimuchyate etadvaitat. And after he says this is one of the most important mantras of all of Upanishads. Yeah. And it's called Hamsa Gayatri. And I want to give an introduction of what this Hamsa Gayatri is today. And then over the next 2 to 3 sessions, we will dwell just on this mantra. If you feel that we have spent a lot of time talking about lots of other things, this mantra is amazing. Hamsa Suchi Sat, Vasu Antariksha Sat, Hota Vedi Shat, Atitir Durona Shat, Nrishat, Varashat, where is it? Nrushat Sat, Nrushad, Varasad, Rutashad, Vyomasad, Abja Goja, Ritaja, Adrija Ritam Bihat. So these verses are real tongue twisters. And this is, real ancient Sanskrit verses that also appear in Rig Veda. It appears in Taittiriya Aranyaka. So these are really ancient verses that Kata Rishi has again seen, and he has documented that in Katha Upanishad. So we will be spending some time talking about it, but probably what I'll do is, for today's talk, I'm just going to spend on this one topic, Hamsa Shuchi Shat. Okay, and that's an amazing line. So let's deal with that. So let's go to the first line. So Puram ekadvashadvaram ajasya avakrate chetasaha. So Neetaji, did you want to recite, or Pragnesh, did you want to recite the rest of the verse?
Yes,
Let's do the
can.
Gita verse. Yeah, 5:13. Go for it.
Sarva karmani manusa sanyasyaste sukham vashi manavadware pure dehi naiva kurvarta karayan.
Thank you, Pragnesh. So if you if you think about the previous Valli, Yama has said, you got this body, and this is the body is your vehicle, and that you have to make this journey. And we are all very familiar with the chariot, metaphor that Yama spoke about. And you said, this is the body made, this is your chariot, this is your vehicle. You need to make this journey in life. And now Yama comes back to this in a slightly different angle to just remind Nachiketa, and through Nachiketa, the rest of us, to tell us, how limited as beings we are. Yeah, we are in this pindanda, and how limited we are. Let's look at the Gita verse 5:13. Navadware pure dehi na eva kurvan na karayan. So that should be the spirit what Krishna has said. This body that you are going through samsara has got 9 gates, according to Krishna or Veda Vyasa, in this verse. Okay, so we have these 9 gates. So I'm going to just open it for discussion. What does that 9 gates actually signify? Number one, I want one of you to enumerate the 9 gates and then explain what is the philosophy or the sense of the 9 gates that Vyasa or Krishna has reminded us in 5:13. So who wants to take that up, please? What are the 9 gates? I've numbered it, but it'd be nice if somebody could go through it. Okay, dead silence. So the gates are all closed. No.
Do you want me to go?
Devalji, go for it. Yeah.
So the 1 and 2 are 2 ears, 3 and 4 are 2 eyes, 5 and 6 are 2 nostrils, the mouth, the organ of defecation, and I don't know if you include reproduction.
Yeah, absolutely. The organs of, yeah, that's right. So the organs of,
yeah, sorry.
So those are all the 9 that Krishna has spoke about in Gita. So why 9 gates? What is the speciality about gates?
So that those are the points we interact with the outside world. You were saying that we are facing outside.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so the on the face you have all these indriyas and we are facing outside. That is one view. Devalji, thank you so much. So the other view there is when you are in samsara, so that is you're born, and then your body has not perished yet. So you're in the in-between phase. And if you can remember, Krishna has used a verse there, isn't it? You're unmanifested before and you're unmanifested afterwards. But it is this brief period of 100 years or whatever that you are here. That particular phase when we are here with the gross body is the samsara phase, where we go through, we use our sadhana sharira and do stuff, either prayers or shreyas. Now, when your innings comes to an end, when your innings comes to an end, what happens? So you have to exit, right? The jivas have to exit from the body through some gate. Okay, so that is also a view here about these gates, talking about the route where in which the jivas exit and leave the body. So that is also a one view. Hold on to the thought, because that becomes important when we talk about Katha Upanishad. So in Katha Upanishad, what Yama has said is Puram Eka Dvasha. So what is Eka Dvasha? Dvasha means 10. Eka means add 1. So that is 11. He has given 11 gates. So Yama has got a different approach to this problem, and he has given 11 gates. So who is going to add the 10th and the 11th here? So who wants to take that up? The clue is all here, but I just want you to capture the 10 and the 11 that Yama is doing, because Yama's view is very comprehensive in this. Pragnesh.
So the 10th is Nabi, through which we are connected through the umbilical cord to the mother's placenta. And the 11th, I think, is the Brahmarandra or Sahasra Chakra, which is in modern science anterior fontanelle or close to that.
Fantastic. Pragnesh, 100 out of 100. So completely right. So Pragnesh got this amazingly right. So the 10th one, the 10th gate is the umbilical cord. So when do we have the umbilical cord? When we are inside the womb and we are stuck to that placenta. And that umbilical cord it serves its purpose only for 9 months. And after that, we are making our exit from the womb and we are coming out. And at that point, that gate is closed. Yeah. So that 10th gate is before we actually land on the Prithvi and do our stuff in samsara. Okay. And the 11th one is the anterior fontanelle that many babies have, and then it closes after, I think, I can't remember, 12 months plus. It closes, I think. So the anterior fontanelle of anatomy is the 11th gate of babies. And that is also the Sahasrara Chakra that Pragnesh ji was talking about. So here what Yama is giving is one gate is even before you come into the material world to do your stuff. And the 11th gate is for the ones that have really achieved something. If I have got a sadhana sharira, and if I make good use of it, and if I make good use of the sadhana sharira, eventually what should happen is I should exit this body, not using these 9 gates that is described in Gita, but I should exit through the 11th gate. Okay, and then the philosophy is the Vedas talk quite a lot about this, of those jivas that exit through the Sushumna Nadi, and then it goes through the Sushumna Nadi, goes through Sahasrara Chakra, and then it exits. So those jivas that exit through that route, they never come back again. Okay, so that is the 11th gate. I hope you find this interesting, comparing Gita and Katha Upanishad. So look at the common words. Puram. Puram means what? This body. Yeah. So Kanji Puram, it is a city. Similarly, this is a city. And Suresh ji took us very beautifully in 13a and 13b, talking about Kshetra. We are Kshetrastaha. We are just residing in this body, which is also called Puram. Yeah. Highly evolved body, or the sadhana sharira of all of us. Okay. So Yama is asking us, it's all fine, but did you ask the question? You are residing in this place with 11 gates. Who created this? Who owns it? Who controls it? So the first, he wants us to think about these things. Of course, we don't think about it. We just abuse our body and in the process spoil our health and so on. We don't think about deeper philosophical questions. So when you ask that question, this body that I'm in, who created this body? It is not my father and mother. They may have been some cause, but there is a fundamental cause, isn't it, of how we come into being. And Yama reminds us, the unborn is responsible for creating our body. The uncreated created our body. So he says ajasya. So ajasya means the unborn created our body. Okay. So here I have a question. So in the chapter 12, in the chapter 2, the 12th verse, the famous verse of Gita, Krishna has said, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nacha bhavishyamaha sarve vayam ataha param. Yeah, that particular verse, which famous verse that we all know. There he has established the unborn nature of both the Supreme and the Jiva. But what is the difference between the unborn nature of both? So who wants to answer this question? There is a fundamental difference, isn't it? Although Jivas are unborn and uncreated, God is unborn and uncreated. What is the difference between the Jiva and Brahman?
We are dependent and he is independent.
Thank you. Anything else with regards to being born? Anything else?
We have parents, he don't have parents.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Neetaji,
Oh, sorry.
go
No,
for
David,
it.
go ahead.
Both are unborn. So the difference is, I thought is the Sarva Guna Sampanna, and we have few gunas, whereas so we
Okay.
are Anu and he is Pruhanta.
Okay, so let me put this differently. If I say God is also born, he also has a birth, and then we also have a birth. What is our birth?
Unborn is in without a body, isn't it? So he doesn't have a Puram.
Yeah. Okay, very good. You're getting in the right direction. Anybody else? Pragnesh?
Jivas have linga sharira. He does not have any material body.
Brilliant. Yes, excellent, Sushrut. Pragnesh?
I think Susruji has answered, but I was going to go through that Sutra Mani Gana. So he's like a catalyst. He takes he doesn't take part in reaction, though he facilitates the reaction, while we are all the main compound. So Batra Shadigara, so he's the thread through which all the beads are linked together. But though he's everything, he's nothing. That sort of. We have discussed this in 13th chapter in the first half of.
Thank you, Pragnesh. So all of us got some captured key points here. So the primary, sorry, did we, somebody else? No.
God, Sankalpa Matra Avatara. For
Okay.
Jivas, the karma, according to their karmas, they themselves will take the Sharira.
Thank you.
Sankalpa is God.
Okay, thank you, Vaniji. Wonderful. Yeah. So the key concept there is Jivas are unborn, but they are born in the sense the birth of the Jiva is that they acquire a material body, right? So, for example, there was never a time when the Jivas did not have a material body. As Sushrut mentioned, they always have Linga Sharira, even in the Mahapralaya state. When they come into creation, they acquire a gross body. So that is the creation of Jivas. When I say creation, Jivas are created means not that Jivas were created from de novo. No, Jivas acquire a material body. That is their creation. Whereas for the Paramatma, he is unborn, but he still takes various avatars. Yeah. So for him, it is his avatars, vyuhas, amshas. They are all considered as some kind of a birth of the Supreme in one way, in the sense that he is actually not born. He just takes avatars. That is all he does. He never has any. Asangoyam heya purushaha is the very important verse of the Upanishads, where it means that this Paramatma has no association with material things ever. Yeah, he does not link up with the material thing at all. He is immanent in all of his material creation, but he is also transcendent. So those are the two key ideas of the Vedas, immanent and transcendent. Okay, so that is unborn. So he Ajasya creates Puram Ekadvasha Dwaram Ajasya. And this Ajasya is what? avakrate chetasaha. Vakra chetas is all of us who have a lot of envy, arrogance, ego. We have all sorts of, we think ill of others, all sorts of things becomes vakra chetas. Whereas he is avakra chetas. He's always pure. He's always sarvajna. He's always straightforward in what he does. And there is always a purpose. As Vaniji mentioned, satya sankalpa with what he does. So, but we are vakra chetasaha. We are impure and crooked most of the time. So, anushtaya na shochati vimuktascha vimukyate etadvai tat. Yeah. So, anushtaya means anusandana. Anusandana means when one knows this truth, that this body does not belong to me. I'm just riding this body, but I need to understand that this is the supreme that has given the sadhana sharira for me to make progress. And that I am always dependent, as Pratibhaji mentioned. Okay, then really one knows this properly. When you have this anushtaya, when you have this anusandana, then you really know what the philosophy is, that I am actually nobody. I may have a reality and I may be here, but my reality and my existence is totally dependent on the supreme person. Okay, so when you have that philosophy of life, then we all know na shochati, no sorrow whatever in whatever situation, because we know that there is the supreme who is constantly making note of what we are doing, but at the same time he is allowing things to happen for our own benefit. Okay, so when we take that view, we become fearless and we don't have any sorrow. And when we are in that situation, Yama says, he describes those people who are in that situation as vimuktascha vimukyate, vimuchyate. They become jivan muktas even in the samsara state. That is how exalted a person can become when truly he understands the philosophy of the Vedas and approaches life like that. So again, Yama says, you know that inside that Puram is you and inside you is that Paramatma. That same Paramatma is also inside you when you are in moksha sthiti. Yetadvai tat. Okay. So here it is always useful when we are doing this to remind ourselves in this chariot metaphor that Yama has given us in the first adhyaya. I've just got a very small quiz. Who is the jiva in this whole figure? Who is the jiva? Who is going to answer that, please?
Passenger.
Ratinam, yeah.
Oh, this guy here in the arrow, right? The passenger. Yeah, so that's right. So the passenger is the jiva. This fellow who is a charioteer is the buddhi. The reins of the mind and all the indriyas are the 5 horses and they are making their onward journey. So that is one metaphor that Yama has given us to understand what is our constitutional position. And here he is given a metaphor of somebody in a place in a Puram with 11 gates. Okay, so 2 metaphors in Katha Upanishad to understand our own constitutional position. So once we have understood the constitutional position and then we know that there is this Paramatma who is inside us, how should our upasana be as we reside in this body with 11 gates? How do we approach this whole thing? So Yama says, okay, as I told you, I am in this body, right? That Paramatma is inside you. So how do you kind of practically, so this is a very practical verse. How do you practically employ this in your day-to-day life? And this verse, the Hamsa Gayatri, essentially summarizes what is the Vedic philosophy of the Supreme. If somebody on the streets asks us, you Hindus, what is your view on God? What do you think God is? This particular verse will actually answer that question. And over the next 2 weeks, we will explore these ideas. So what is this verse? So immediately Yama then goes on to this particular verse called, I'll just take you through the verse and there are quite a lot of quiz coming up. Hamsa Shuchi Sat, Vasu Antariksha Sat, Pota Vedishat, Atitir Durona Shat, Rushat, Varasat, Rutashat, Vyomashat, Abja, Goja, Rutaja, Adrija, Rutam Brihat. Okay, so these are very, very cryptic verses, and as I said, very ancient verses. And we need to take what is called as a Kabbalistic interpretation of these verses. So I'm going to stop and ask, who is going to tell us what does Kabbalistic interpretation of scriptures mean? So anybody wants to take a view on this? Have you heard of this concept called Kabbalistic interpretations of Judaism and Catholicism? So who wants to handle this?
Madhu, you have only explained that it means breaking open every single word to find out a deeper philosophical meaning.
Wonderful, Devalji. Thank you so much for bringing that in. So that is the Kabbalistic interpretation. It is universal in all the big philosophies of the world of actually breaking the words open, rearranging them, and understanding what it means. And that exactly is what we need to do for this Hamsa Gayatri. Okay, so before we go into that, there are a few interesting ideas here. It's called Gayatri, right? So there are no surprises there. So it's called Gayatri. So the question is, why is it called Gayatri? Okay, so who wants to answer that question taking up? I'm going to go to the right side first before coming to the left side of the slide. So let's go to the right side of the slide. I've got a lot of questions there. So first we will get one of our friends to recite this particular Gayatri on the right, and then we'll take up some questions. So who wants to recite the Gayatri? The Gayatri, who wants to recite that? We've all gone into deep meditation. So, so the Gayatri here we know Om Bhur Bhuvassuvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonaha Prachodaya. Okay, so here I've got a question. What is Brahma Gayatri? What is Vishwamitra Gayatri in this equation? So who wants to answer that question? We have done Gayatri session. Gosh. Suresh, go. Suresh, go for it. New answer. New student. Yes, sir.
What you boxed in red is perhaps Brahma Gayatri, and the rest is Vishwamitra Gayatri.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Anybody else?
I think Vishwamitra, he saw what was already existing there. He could see it, and it was rediscovered by the sage Vishwamitra. And what was already existing always was Brahma Gayatri.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pratibhaji. Anybody else has a slightly different view? I think Deval had unmuted.
Sorry, I was going to say the same as Suresh Ji.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I would give it this to Pratibhaji. So the Tatsavitur Varenyam, the one that starts from Tatsavitur Varenyam is called Brahma Gayatri. Whereas Vishwamitra, when he saw it as Om Bhur Bhuvassuvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam. So this is what? Pranava, this is Vyahriti, this is Gayatri. Okay, so the Pranava, Vyahriti and Gayatri together becomes Vishwamitra Gayatri. Whereas the Gayatri that is there, that is also there in Rig Veda in other places, is the Brahma Gayatri. Okay, so Gayatri, then the question here is, why is it called Gayatri? And what is the etymology of Gayatri? And why is this mantra called Gayatri mantra? Who wants to take that up? We've discussed this before. And there are some clues on the left side. Okay.
Gayatri Chatrayatri said 3 times, like the Tatsavitruvarenium, Bhargo Devasya, Dhimahi Diyo Yona Prachodaya. That's the 3 versions of it. So,
okay, thank you, Jagdish. Deval?
It aligns itself with the Chandas, isn't it? So 24 letters of the Gayatri from Tat Savitur Varenyam is the, I'm just going with the clue. Sorry, you've done 2 lectures on this.
Yeah, so I think Deval, you got it. So I think you're absolutely right. So the Gayatri can take various meanings here. Is it Gayatri mantra because it's got 24 syllables? Because as you know, there are 7 chandas, primary chandas, right? Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Bruhati, Pankti, Trishtub and Jagati. So those are all the main chandas that we have. And the Gayatri is the first one and the most common chandas that you would find in Rig Veda, for example, and it's got 24 syllables. So this mantra, Brahma Gayatri, has got 24 syllables. Is that the reason why it's called Gayatri? No, that is a very secondary reason, but the primary reason that it is called Gayatri, and we've discussed this with evidence from Chandogya Upanishad. To go back to that session talking about Gayatri. So Jagadish got this, almost right. So here, Gayati cha Trayatecha. So that's the meaning. That is the etymology of Gayatri. If you sing him, he will protect you. Trayatecha, Jagadish. Trana means to protect. Yeah. So if you Gayaticha, Trayatecha. If you sing his praise, he will protect you. Sing whose praise? Tavanasya mahima tato jayamshta purushaha padovasya sarva bhutani tripadasya amrutandevi. The same Chandogya Upanishad talks about it, which is the same as Purusha Shuktas. And that is how you do the scientific logic there, applying various verses and understand the Gayatri is Narayana himself in this Gayatri. So you have to have a similar kind of approach here and say, this has got 2 verses here. Yeah, this 2 verses, each verses has got 24 syllables each. So that is in Gayatri Chandas. And look at the number of words in each mantra. That is also interesting because we know numerology in Vedic philosophy is very, very important, as you know. So the first verse has got 8 words and the second verse has got 10 words. And you add them both, you get 18. No surprises there. 18 is the Paramatma Vishnu himself that we have dealt with on a number of occasions. So the Hamsa Gayatri has got 18 words, and over 18 words, it celebrates the greatness of the Supreme. Okay. The quiz here. In our routine Gayatri, Brahma Gayatri, how many Shabdas are there? We know there are 24 syllables, but how many words are there? So who is going to take that one? The clue is here. You can take a guess. Okay, so there are 10 words in Brahma Gayatri. In here, there are 10 words, and in Hamsa Gayatri, there are 18 words talking about the greatness of the Supreme. And I've listed all this here. Okay, so without going into the details of it, I just want to then briefly talk about Hamsa and then pass the stage on to Pragnesh. Okay, so what is the first word in this Gayatri? Hamsa Suchi Shatil. So this is very strange. Yama is saying Hamsa. Hamsa is a bird, right? We all know goose, white in color. So it is Hamsa. That is the goose. Yeah. He says swan. Sorry, that is the swan. And that is Hamsa. So why is Yama out of the blue talking to us about, I'm sorry, I clicked something. So why is Yama suddenly talking about Hamsa? So we need to think about this carefully. The reason is the same Hamsa Gayatri mantra actually comes in Rig Veda. Okay, and this is really interesting of correlating this. So in Rig Veda, the 4th mandala, it's called Vamadeva mandala. Okay, anybody wants to say anything about Vamadeva Rishi? Has anybody heard about Vamadeva Rishi? Okay, so Vamadeva is one of the greatest rishis of the Vedic times. And there are so many verses in the 4th mandala. It is dedicated to Vamadeva and his family. Okay, so the same Vamadeva also comes in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And at some point we will deal with this. And we says, Vamadevo Pratipede Aham Manuhu Abhavam Suryascha Iti. There are all those very famous mantras that come in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad when we handle that verse called Aham Brahmasmi, which seems to confuse certain individuals, but certainly not Vamadeva. Vamadeva was not confused when he said Aham Manuhu Abhavam Suryascha Iti and so on in that particular paragraph of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where the famous verse Aham Brahmasmi comes. Okay, so Vamadeva is there. So he's a very, very big Rishi. And he has seen the same mantra which has been documented in Rig Veda, 4th mandala, 40th sukta, 5th rik. Now what I want to do is, I am not capable of reciting these Rig Veda mantras as how they should be recited. I'm just giving you a padapata of breaking it open and giving you ideas of what it is. But I'm going to do this from how a scholar would actually recite this mantra of the Rig Veda, and I'm just going to play it. So it just lasts for 25 seconds. Here we go.
We can't hear Madhu.
Oh. Okay, hang on. I think it's okay. I think it's probably because I haven't put the audio thingy, the quality on the audio. Okay, so we'll skip that. Next week I'll play this the mantra. Okay, so Hamsa. So the both Rig Veda as well as Yama have started this verse with Hamsa. The question is, who is this Hamsa? And that is very, very interesting. Yeah, Hamsa is an amazing topic. Hamsa in scriptures. Okay. There is a Hamsa Upanishad, if some of you are interested, it's in Shukla Yajur, whereas Kata is Krishna Yajur. Okay. Hamsa Gita, who wants to answer this question? What is Hamsa Gita? And the clue is in the picture. Anybody for Hamsa Gita? Has anybody heard of Hamsa Gita? Okay, so Uddhava Gita is called Hamsa Gita. Okay, so it is the same name. And then you have in Nimbaraka Sampradaya Vaishnavism, Hamsa is an incarnation of Vishnu. Yeah, so that is an important concept. Okay, then you have here, I've got a question. I've got the images of two exalted souls here, and I've said Paramahamsa. So who is going to answer? Who is the person on the left and who is the person on the right? So this we should be able to answer. So who is going to take this one? Pragnesh.
Person on the left is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and
Yeah.
on the right is Yogi Paramahamsa Nanda.
Okay, well done, Pragnesh. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Paramahamsa Yogananda. Okay, so exalted being in our tradition, we also call them as Paramahamsas. Okay, and who is this individual who is riding on this swan? Who is this chap? That's the next question. Who wants to take? Somebody said the answer. So Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma's vehicle is actually a Hamsa, a swan, which is very metaphorical. Yeah. So then here is another interesting thing. Did you know that the term Hamsa is also existing in Mesopotamian civilization? And in the African cultures, they actually have got something called the Hamsa art. And the Hamsa in that tradition signifies Surya or the sun. And in our tradition, also Hamsa can be the sun. Okay, so there are all these links, which is really interesting when you think about Hamsa. Then, of course, there is the Hamsa Gayatri, and finally, the Hamsa and Kundalini is also part of the yoga. So this is the Hamsa Gayatri. Okay, so the Hamsa Gayatri is talking about this Hamsa Namaka Paramatma. And Uddhava Gita is called the Hamsa Gita, is where the clue is. Krishna is also called Hamsa, and he is singing this philosophy to Uddhava. Okay, so the Vedic etymology of Hamsa itself is very, very interesting. And I think what I'll do today is, because we are running out of time, I'll probably just deal with this slide in a very, very brief way. And I'm just going to close at this point and hand it over to Pragneshji. So the word Hamsa, for example, so as I said, it is a swan. It is a white swan. So do we anybody have any views on what is the metaphorical significance of the white swan? Why should the Supreme be considered as a white swan? Anybody wants to take that question? So white is a Manjunath.
Is it because the swan can differentiate? I mean, if it's milk and water is combined, it can drink only milk and leave the water.
Yeah, so
Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka.
Yeah, that's true. But God, as you know, doesn't need Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. Yeah, so he doesn't need it. So yeah, you got some ideas there. Thank you, Shilaji. Pragnesh.
White is pure. It is all the colors are mixed in white. And secondly, Hansa is a bird which can fly, which can walk on earth, and which can swim in water.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So white is the indication of purity. So this is a pure being. Yeah. So that is one very, very easy view of why our Vedic rishis have always considered Hamsa as a metaphor of the Supreme. But we have to go deeper than that. We actually break it open. Ha plus ma and sa. Ha means hana. Hana means to leave. Jahati iti haha. Aha. Haha. Jahati iti haha. That means that which has left everything. What has the Supreme Being left? It doesn't have any doshas. Yeah, that is what it has left everything. Does not have any doshas. And saha. Saha means saratvat saha. It is a Sarabhuta. Sarabhuta means essence of what? Essence of auspicious attributes. Okay, so that is a key idea there about why we say Hamsa, Nirdosha, Sarva Guna Purna. And when Acharya says Narayanam Gunai Sarvair Udirnam Doshavarjitam, Devam Narayanam Natva Sarvadosha Vivarjitam Paripurnam. Yeah, so those are all the ideas that we get from Hamsa, that this is an abode, it is a being of infinite auspicious attributes and no defects. So that is a core definition which is captured by Hamsa. And then the verse says this Hamsa is in all the beings, it's an Antaryamin in all the jivas, but Yama takes up the very first being, the highest being that comes out in creation, who is called Suchi. Suchi means a pure being with very little defects. Who are these guys? There are two chaps who are described like that in our Vedic pantheon, Chaturmukha and Mukhya Prana or Vayu. So these two entities who are there on the third rank in the Vedic pantheon are called Shuchis. Okay, the purest among Chetanas. So Yama in the same verse talks about Chaturmukha as Abja. So we will talk about him later. Whereas here he is mentioning about this Prana, who is the purest of being, and this Antaryami Namaka Paramatma in the name of Hamsa actually resides in this pure being called the Mukhya Prana. Okay. Sad means Sidati, dwelling. So he says, he uses the very first example in the Vedic pantheon of Tattva Abhimani Devatas. And when we understand that he is inside him, we automatically understand he is also inside all other Chetanas as Antaryamin, including Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, etc. and you and me. Okay. So therefore, this Prana Tattva, Mukhya Prana as he called, he's got his Antaryamin as this Hamsa. So the Prana is also called Hamsa. So this is important idea that you need to capture, because for the rest of today's section, this is going to be the theme about Prana. So this Prana is also called Hamsa because Hamsa Namaka Paramatma is inside him as his Antaryamin. Okay. Now think about the third view as what Hamsa means. When you say Ham, it's inspiration. Saha means expiration. Okay, so this Ham Saha is inspiration and expiration, which should immediately take you on to this idea of Prana. And that is what I want to do briefly today and close my aspect of the presentation. So inspiration and expiration is Ham Saha. Inspiration is Prana. Expiration is Apana. Okay, so this is gross respiration that we are talking about. Okay, now here is a bit of a medical ideas here. When I talk about gross respiration, there are two types of gross respiration that we all know for some of you who are of medical predisposition. Involuntary gross respiration, this is what we do all our lives. It happens. We just inspire and expire and it automatically happens. Okay, and we know from all the physiology, the heart and nerves in the intercostal muscle region, they all send signals to the midbrain, the brain stem, sorry. It sends signals to the brain stem where the respiratory centers are. And for those of you who are good in anatomy, I am not. There is the inspiratory center, there is the expiratory center, there is the apneustic center, and there is a pneumotaxic center, all placed either in the medulla or in the brain or in the midbrain. And they control the inspiration and expiration in the grossest sense of the body, the sadhana sharira that we hold. But respiration is just not that. So stay with me on this, because I'm sorry, this is going to be hardcore biochemistry, which is one of my favorite subjects. So the real respiration in our bodies actually happens in the mitochondria. Okay, that is called metabolic respiration, also called oxidative phosphorylation. So what happens there? When we inspire, what do we inspire? We inspire oxygen. That oxygen gets circulated through the heart and gets into each cell. And in each cell, there is a mitochondria. Okay, that is where this oxygen actually ultimately goes there. And then through a process called oxidative phosphorylation, so through the process of oxidative phosphorylation, the currency of energy called the ATP molecules are made. Okay, so I hope you will find this interesting, because this oxygen, which is the metabolic respiration, is the air we breathe in. So that is a type of prana. Okay, whereas the currency of energy that we make in our cell, in our body, is the pranic energy, which in the grossest form we call it as ATP molecules. So think about it that way. It becomes very interesting about what this prana is. Okay. Now, of course, on the voluntary side, what do? We do pranayama, where from a voluntary side, we are aware of our inspiration and expiration, and we do various stuff, and that metabolically, physiologically changes our coverings, and it is good for our health. Okay, but there is lots more to prana than just pranayama. And what is that? That is the philosophical aspect of what is this prana. Okay, that energy that comes in. Look at the pranamaya kosha. We have the annamaya, and immediately after annamaya, we have the pranamaya. What is pranamaya kosha made of? Vayu, tejas, and akasha. Space, fire or heat, and then air. And that is what is happening in the mitochondria in oxidative phosphorylation. So rishis have got all this absolutely right, by the way, about what the prana is in the gross sense. What is the pranic energy? When you look at the philosophical side of this, our body is considered alive when this is happening. What is happening when we are breathing? When there is inspiration and expiration, then we know that this jiva is inside this body, and there is some other prana shakti that is there, and there is inspiration and expiration is going on. So the body is alive because the metabolism is going on. Okay. When that prana shakti is gone, jiva goes along with it. Okay, and that is what we call the death of the gross body, but we are not dead. Okay, so that is a philosophical aspect of prana. So the next question is, why is this all happening this way? That is what the philosophers want us to ask. Why does the oxidative phosphorylation happen? So why does inspiration and expiration need to happen? We can just absorb, isn't it, like many fishes in water, but we don't do all this. So he's asking, ask that higher, deeper questions as to why is this all happening this way? First question. Now, here is where your philosophy should come, and you need to apply this sutra that I've told you a million times. Abhimani vyapadeshastu vishesha anugatibhyam. Anything that happens in the material world always has an Abhimani Devata that controls that activity. That is the Vedic view. And the Vedic Abhimani Devata for all this process of gross respiration, metabolic respiration, is this prana, also called Vayu in Vedic philosophy. And that is the core message that I want to give you from today's talk about who this prana or hamsa is. This prana is also called hamsa because hamsa namaka paramatma is inside him and making him happen, because everybody has an antaryamin, right? This vayu is also an exalted jiva like us. Because that hamsa namaka paramatma is inside him, this prana is also called hamsa. Okay, the evidence can be found in Prashna Upanishad. We don't have time for it. Maybe we deal with it in the next week. Okay. Now, if you look at Keno Upanishad, the same prana, the Chaturmukha and Shiva are having an argument, not an argument, they're having a discussion here. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. Kena pranaha pratamaha praiti yuktaha. So Shiva is asking Chaturmukha this question: how does this prana operate? Which prana? This prana. So our friend Chaturmukha, they gives the answer. Shrotrasya shrotram manasa mano yad vachaha vacham savu pranasya pranaha. This prana operates because this pranasya pranaha is inside him. This pranasya pranaha is called prana, and he's also called hamsa, because as you know, you have that idea of inspiration and expiration and so on. And I've also told you he's an abode of infinite auspicious attributes with no defects. Yeah. So prana and hamsa. So the same prana is also called hamsa. So this is the background with which how we have to approach all this pranayama and the yoga. Okay, so I am going to stop at that point because I've told you various aspects of hamsa, and what I haven't told you is the hamsa from a yogic perspective about how to link hamsa and kundalini, yoga and medicine. How do we link this up and then get philosophy in it? Okay, this is, I'm not an expert in this, but Pragnesh ji has kindly agreed to give us some introduction to this fascinating topic. So Pragnesh, the stage is over to you. I'm going to close my session, Krishna Pranamastu, and I'm going to stop sharing this presentation, and I'm going to put Pragnesh's slides because they are in slightly different format. So bear with me for a minute.
I am happy to share myself if allowed.
It's a good point. I don't know if Sudarshan is there. Let me just check if I can do it. Just a minute. Good idea. Let me just check. If I can.
I can share.
Oh yeah, there you are. Go for it.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I must make a confession in the beginning that this is not meant for such a spiritually elevated group. I have normally given this to neurosurgical or spinal surgical group. So these disclosures are slightly different. I am not as elevated. I am still on a path. And today I have learned more than I have ever learned. So I normally say I'm in Vanaprasthashram. I have a little bit of spiritual background and some fundamental knowledge of Patanjali Yoga. So we all know that this, are you able to hear and see me well?
Yes, Pragneshji, all good.
Yes.
Good. So this is the fundamental anatomy that we know about the spinal column, the cervical, the thoracic, the lumbar, the sacrum, and the coccyx in lateral and front view. But what I'm going to touch on is this, the 5 chakras in spine and then 2 additional, which we all together call Kundalini, starting from below upwards, Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Visuddha, Ajna, and Sahasra Chakra. This has also some linkage with the Western philosophies, and we know the 2 symbols which are very commonly used and confused in medical sciences. One of them is caduceus of Mercury, and another is a rod of Asclepius. And in the next slide, I will show the difference. So the caduceus is traditional emblem of Greek god Hermes, messenger to the gods. He is the patron of thieves, merchants, and travelers. And it has got 2 snakes entwined around a staff with wings, which is more commonly used in medical, some of the symbols. And it represents fertility, rebirth, rejuvenation, harmony, and balance. While on the right side, you can see the rod of Asclepius, which is a symbol of Greco-Roman god of healing and medicine. And that is the correct symbol to be used in medicine, featuring a single snake wrapped around a staff. The staff may symbolize authority and the snake symbolizes rebirth, healing, and rejuvenation. So that's the Western view. We have seen various medical emblems, as you see, BMA, AMA, and World Health Organization, and all Royal Army Medical Corps all have this rod of Asclepius as symbol, as against which our Indian Medical Association emblem has these 2 snakes entwined in the against the stump in the center. We go back to Kundalini, which is where we should have started, is a Sanskrit word which means a coiled serpent, and it is the energy that flows through the 7 chakras, which will dwell in a minute. Is the force that powers our spiritual body, and energy is shown in ancient drawing as 2 serpents, and the serpents are known around the world as symbols of wisdom. And you can see various pictures that I have borrowed from, and we are going to dwell on those in a minute. So in this picture, you are seeing a pink and a green snakes entwined against the central, with the 2 nadis, as we can understand, are Ida and Pingala, and in the center is Sushumna, which I will dwell further. You can see 7 chakras here, but they will be also seen later on. This is just a colorful slide. But when we talk about this Muladhara chakra, Swadhisthana chakra, Manipura chakra, Anahata chakra, Visuddha chakra, Ajna chakra, and Sahasra chakra, they all have different letter, they have different numbers of petals, and they have different colors for the right reason. Unfortunately, the time would not permit to go into the infinite details of all those, but they are also known as root chakra, sacral chakra, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye. The third eye is also known in the Lord Shiva's context, or in the medical or neurosurgical or neuro-oncological, and Madhuji being oncologist may agree, triretinoblastomas. So triretinoblastomas, we go back to pineal and whatnot. but 2 eyes, and that's where we can refer to. And the crown chakra is what we referred earlier, the 11th entry point or exit point, which is Brahmarandra, Sahasra Chakra, or the anterior fontanelle, which incidentally closes between 12 and 18 months. So here you can again go to those 7 chakras, and they are related to survival, sexuality, power, love, communication. So love, as you can see, is very close to the heart. Communication is very close to the throat because our larynx is in the throat, and then our function and spirituality, which is the topmost. I hope I am making some sense. This is a very famous picture that we see in the ancient medical textbooks, and you can see the 7 letters that we go by depending on which chakra we are talking about from top to bottom. Om, Om, Hum, Yam. Hum is what Madhuji was elaborating on, and I will come back to that in a minute. Yam, Ram, Vam, Lam, and we have seen this being chanted in various ritualistic and our puja. As I mentioned, little bit of connection with the Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, which has got 8 limbs, Yam, starting from the left, and in the clockwise fashion. You can see, if you are able to see my cursor moving, but I'm sure you are all familiar with these words: Yam, Niyam on the right, Ashan, Pranahar, Pratyahar, Dhyan, Dharana, and Samadhi. Samadhi is the ultimate, which we are all trying to achieve. I do not want to go into the details of this, but if time permits, in another session, we will talk about this in more detail. And this is where we need to dwell a little bit more on. So in addition to the 7 chakras, here the 2 nadis are very well. In fact, all the 3 nadis are very well shown. So you have on one side Ida, on other side you have got Pingla, and in the center you have got the Sushumna. And the closest analogy one can, of course, they are also known as ego and superego or id, as the Devilji or some of the psychiatrists would agree to, that id, ego, and superego is what the Freudian psychology was connected to. It also tells us, as you can see, that on the left we have got collective supraconscious future, on the right we have got collective subconscious, which is past, and in the central part, which is the Sushumna, is the present or central part of evolution, collective unconsciousness. And we'll talk in the next slide about the same. This is more complex, and you can see all those are numbered here. The 3 nadis we were talking about, Ida, Pingla, and Sushumna, and the chakras 7. Now you can see Hansha is referred to here, and if you see the symbol here is just above the eyebrow, which is linked very close to the Agya Chakra, which is between the 2 eyebrows. So I think that is the closest. So it is higher than 5 and lower than 6, somewhere in between. That is the best I can say. And Hansha, as Madhuji very rightly explained, her is inspiration and Saha means expiration. If time permits, I will like to dwell on my reading. Since Madhuji gave me homework, I have done some homework on Hansha, which we'll talk about. Those who are medical background and agree to the genetic constitution will also agree here that on one side there is a father side, on the other side there is a mother side. And traditionally, our understanding, most of us having an Indian background and patriotic society may agree that we get mental and physical well-being from father's side and emotional well-being from the mother's side. And there are various pressure points and acupuncture and whatnot. If you want to look at here, on one hand, there is a sun, and on the other hand, there is a moon, but all this is so deep. And I don't think I will take time today to go. And to be very honest, I also need to learn, because I'm talking to more learned people than I normally average do. Coming back to the consciousness and the Kundalini, on the left side, the Panch Mahabhuta, and as during the gestation, as we are manifesting, we go from the subtle to the gross, starting from ether to earth, as we have been repeatedly taught in Panch Mahabhuta, that ether is the, earth is the solid form that we all can see easily. And there are symbols in the center. But on the other hand, during the liberation, when we are meditating, our journey is upwards, starting from Muladhara and eventually from Ajna Chakra and to Sahasra Chakra, that we eventually get elevated. this is a simplistic view of the location of it. So for example, Muladhara Chakra, which is the lowest, is located in coccyx, sacrum, and we know that in the sacral plexus, Swadhisthana, if there is a Koda Equina syndrome, I am bringing my neurosurgery into equation, and some of you will understand more that we have got sexual and sphincter disturbances. Manipura is lumbar, Anahata is dorsal. There are many procedures currently done, including for cardiac ischemia, dorsal column stimulation, and for pain control and whatnot. So there is a lot of importance of the dorsal column in Anahata Chakra. Cervical is Vishuddha, forehead, Ajna Chakra, as I said. All of us in Hinduism, including women, normally have the bindi or the beauty spot, there's the Westerners call, but we have the various types of the tilak, and that's where I think we are locating ourselves close to the hypothalamus, if you want to call, or pineal region, or somewhere in the center of the brain. And crown is the ultimate, which we agreed earlier was the antenne fontanelle, or the topmost spot. I am also thinking that could this be a meeting point of the two motor strip, because that is the most important thing that we have. And then the connections, as you can see, with the 5 elements, and then light and thought, and it can deal with the various things as mentioned here and can be blocked by all this. And we know we are always concentrating on this pure cosmic energy and earthly attachments, which is stopping us from liberation. So we need to concentrate there. And of course, there is an illusion mentioned here. Devalji might have more to say about that. This is again a beautiful picture. I have some more pictures, but I have restricted here for this only. Again, I'm going back to those elements and the seed letter. Yes, this is the word I was looking. So from Om, Hum we were discussing earlier in the Visuddha Chakra expression, Yam, Ram, Vam, Lam, and this is what we have heard. And then it is in the various loka, Satya Loka, Mahar, Jnana, Tapa, Suvaha, Bhuavaha. So Bhu, Bhuva, Sattva, that's what we are also talking about, the Gayatri. And then these are the petals I was talking about, 4, 6, 10, 12, 16, 2, and 1000. So this is 1000 petal lotus at the top through which the liberation occurs. And there is a reason for those 1000 petals also. Also, those who believe in colorology or gemology have linked various chakras, and I do not want to go into the details of that because that's not the purpose. And same way, there are other things that you can, I will share this slide set later on. Coming back to the modern science, we all are modern scientists, and Madhuji has taken right up to the first MBBS of biochemistry and the ATP and the mitochondrial. So I cannot leave without talking about the genes, which is also double helical structure, which is almost like our two snake entwined around. And then in the lots of astrophysics, you see this sort of black hole and galaxy and whatnot. So in short, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. This was a whistle tour. My aim is, and I'm already working on that because I had expressed this long time ago, that for this particular group, I have to elevate myself, and I am preparing a talk, which I have listened to and finalized some of the slides, which given chance, I will talk only on the spiritual side rather than this medical side. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Pragneshji, that as you said, it's a whistle-stop tour on this whole chakra business and Kundalini, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, and so on. It kind of fits in very well with what we are trying to achieve in this Katha Upanishad when he says 11 gates and then talks about the prana, because the whole idea of prana yama is to regulate that prana, the inspiration, expiration, and through that process regulate our own energy. So the key idea that the key thing that I want to clarify here is we should not just think about this pranayama just for the gross body alone, because at the end of the day, we have to move beyond the gross body and look at ourselves as jivas. And when we take that philosophical view, that is where the Katha Upanishad comes from. So the philosophical aspect of the whole prana shakti and so on comes from Yama, which we will carry on and discuss in great detail over the next 2 weeks. And I hope that Pragnesh's excellent presentation gives you a bird's eye view of what this field looked like. And for those of us who are interested in it, can go ahead and do further research. I've got a very enthusiastic hand. So is it Pragnesh's hand that's come out? So Pragnesh.
Yes, sir. You had given me some homework to look at Hamsa, which I have looked at, and I know we are all. I think one of the best lesson I have learned today when you are talking earlier, when you started, is that for the path who are this follower of this Vedic philosophy, is one to understand that Lama and Krishna are all same. And if I extend it further, can I spend a couple of minutes on what I have learned today about the Hamsa before this session
Sure,
started?
sure. Go for it. Go for it.
So in Hinduism and Buddhism, Hansa represents chakras, 5 senses and associated mudras, the hand gestures that redirect energy flow throughout the body. Thumb is equal to fire or solar plexus, index finger is air, middle finger represents eternal, ring earth, and pinky, the little finger, water. In Muslim and Judaism also there is a lot of mention about Hamsa. In Muslim, it is the hand of Fatima. Fatima al-Zahra is a daughter of Prophet Muhammad and his first wife Khadija, and it symbolizes of protection, power, and strength. The 5 pillars of Islam, which is like faith, prayer, pilgrimage, Hajj, and Zakat and Roja, are all represented by the 5 arms or fingers of, and it is also known in Arabic as Khamza. Instead of Hamza, Arabic says Khamza, and that also is the symbol of the 5 elements. In Jewish, it is the hand of Miriam, which is virtuous sister to Moses and Aaron, and Hamza in Hebrew word is for 5 fingers of talisman. The 5 books of Torah, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, are all suggestive of this. You mentioned about Mesopotamia, which is currently Iraq. Also, it is amulet to protect against the evil eye. So in Turkey, when I went to Turkey, I got this Hamza. I never realized what it was, but today I know. Coming back to Hans, it is the swan, which is the, we talked about the Vahana of Lord Brahma, but we also have seen when Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Barutari, we used to pray, in school days we used to sing the prayer for Lord Goddess Saraswati, and Hansa is also a vehicle for Goddess Saraswati, and it is also a symbol of purity, detachment, divine knowledge, and cosmic pran and highest spiritual accomplishment. And Paramahamsa, as you rightly emphasized, the Paramahamsa Yoganand and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is one who is perfect, has a perfect union and balance of life. And the last is when you keep repeating Hamso, 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 it becomes Soham, which is also very important in our philosophy. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Pragnesh. Yeah, thank you very much for, this is an extensive review. So I think the key message there is the Vedic word Hamsa should not be underestimated. And when Yama starts off his Hamsa Gayatri with Hamsa, there is so much that we know about it. So let's just not skim the surface and say white swan and carry on with it, or just say Hamsa means the sun. Hamsa means the sun, Hamsa means the swan. But Hamsa also stands for so many other things, not only in Vedic philosophy, but the philosophies of the world. So it's really is an important, I can't stress enough. So what we will do next week is we'll carry on with this journey, talking about Hamsa in great detail. Yes, Pragnesh ji very briefly mentioned about Hamsa mantra. That is Hamsa, Soham, Swaha. So those are the 3 mantras. So we will talk about that as well. So it opens up a whole lot of Vedic philosophy around this. So I'm going to close today's session. I think we are running well above our usual targets. Unless there are any pressing questions, I think probably we should close today's sessions. Any questions, please? For Pragnesh ji? Okay, fantastic. So if there are no further questions, could I invite, let's pick Suresh ji from Ahmedabad to take us through the Omkara Chintana, and we can close today's session. Suresh, over to you.
Oh.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So we will catch up again next Sunday for another excellent session. Okay, take care and stay safe. Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu and Dr. Prakash.